Become a channel member to gain early access to all FiveM scripting videos. Hey guys, it's Alpha, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you how to create a MySQL database for your FiveM server. And then we're going to create a quick script that will basically get the player's Steam ID and their Steam name and insert that into the database when they first join the server. So we're going to go ahead and firstly head over to the GitHub link for FiveM mysql-async. I'll leave a link to this in the description. And we're just going to put this into our server because it is a library that allows us to basically run SQL queries from our Lua scripts. So I'm going to go ahead and download this as a zip. And then I'll open these folders. And here we've got the zipped file. So we're just going to go into our resources and then put this in here. And then we're just going to extract it here. Brilliant. And then we can remove the zip. And we're just going to rename this to mysql-async instead of FiveM mysql-async master. And then in here we've got just the default resource, and it's got the FX manifest. That one's plug and play, ready to go. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make a, actually we'll just copy the template resource, paste that, and then we'll rename this database test. Call this one. We'll go in there, we'll just close that out and maximize that. So we've got our default stuff. We don't need a client.lua for this script. We'll just need an FX manifest and a server.lua. So we'll open both of those with code. So in our FX manifest, we're not going to need files and we're not going to need client scripts. We just need server script. So we'll just put server.lua in there. And then for the description, we'll put a database script to add player Steam ID into database, like so. And also what we're going to need to do on server scripts is just add a quick comma, and we're also going to need to add in here at mysql-async. So this needs to be named exactly the same as the resource folder. So obviously we renamed it from FiveM mysql-async master to mysql-async. So if you're going to have it named something different, ensure that that is named the same, because this is the directory /lib, because that's a library. And then in there, there's a file called mysql with capital M, SQ and L .lua, like so. So this is basically just allowing this script that we're making now to access the MySQL library from the mysql-async resource. So in our server.lua, what we're going to do is we're going to do add event handler. And we're going to call it player connecting with a capital C. This is already an event that happens when a player is connecting to the server, and we're just adding a handler, so something that happens when this event is happening, basically. So I'm going to put function, and then in the parameters we're going to do name. We'll do set kick reason. This is for deferrals, basically when someone's connecting to the server, and then we'll just put deferrals as well, like so. And then we'll just take this. We'll just take this final close bracket and we'll put end at the bottom. Inside of here, we're going to do deferrals.defer with brackets. On the next line, we're going to do deferrals.update. And in here, we're just going to put checking player information. Like so, and we'll just put ... Basically, what this means is when someone's connecting to the server, it'll just say checking player information when this is running, just so it knows that we're checking their information, basically. So we'll just put local source equals source, like so. And then we'll do local player name, we'll call it, equals get player name at source. And then it'll be local player ID equals, local player ID equals get player identifier, and then here we'll do source. There we go. Just do a quick space, and then we're going to do a MySQL query now. So we're going to do mysql.async.fetch all with capital A. Also the async has a capital A as well. And then in a bracket, and then in the speech marks, we're going to do select in all capitals, because now we're typing in SQL syntax basically. And we'll do asterisk, because that's going to basically grab everything. So select everything from players. So players will be the name of the table in our database that we're going to create in a little while. Where player underscore ID equals at player ID, like that. And then we'll go to a comma, and then we're going to do open curly brackets, and then we'll bring that down, and then we'll do square brackets, and in quote marks we'll do at player ID, side of that equals player ID, like so. So we'll be grabbing this player ID just here, and it will say in the SQL, well, select everything from the players table where the player ID is equal to the player ID that we've just grabbed there, basically. And then just here inside of the regular bracket, the final bracket, but just after the curly bracket, we'll do function result, like so. And then we're going to take this bracket down, and we'll just put end there. And then inside of here, if result, and then in square brackets 1, so the first result is not equal to, where's this curly line, is not equal to nil, then, so this basically means if there is something, then we'll do deferrals dot done brackets. There we go. So that will just mean, okay, you're good to go, you can connect to the server. Otherwise, so else, we're going to do deferrals dot update, and we'll put registering player information. We'll put, there you go. So basically, if they're already registered, you're good to go, you can connect to the server. Otherwise, we're going to start registering your information. And then in here, we'll just leave a little space again, and then we're going to do another MySQL query. So we're going to do mysql.async again, and this time we're going to do .execute to execute query instead of a fetch all. Instead of grabbing data, we're going to put data in. So instead of reading, we're writing into the database. So then in this one, we're going to do insert in all caps, because it's another SQL syntax. Insert into, it'll be players. And I'm going to insert player ID. Well, this one's actually going to be player underscore ID. And then we'll do player underscore name. There we go. And the values, like so. And it'll be in brackets at player ID and at player name. And outside of the speech marks, we'll just do a little comma. Open curly bracket, bring that down again, just like before. So this time we're going to need to define two things. So in speech marks, at player ID, just like before, equal to player ID, comma, and then we'll do the next one. So square brackets, quote marks, at player name is equal to player name. Brilliant. And then just like before, after the curly bracket, put a little comma, and then we'll put end on there. So now on this comma, we're going to do function. In brackets, we'll do rows affected, like so. And then deferrals dot done once again. So once they've registered their stuff, they can connect to the server. We're just going to need to actually bring that end there, put that, get rid of that bracket, just like that. So then that's for that bracket. You can see in Visual Studio Code, it highlights the brackets. So if this bracket links to this one links to this one links to this one up here. It's very useful to use just to know you've got the right amount of brackets. So then we can save that, and then that should be our Lua side of things done. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to create a new file in here, text document. We'll call it FiveM underscore db.sql. So this is FiveM database.sql, and I'm going to open that with code for now. And then this is actually going to be the syntax of SQL, because we're writing an SQL query now to create the database. So we're going to do create database if not exists. And then we're going to use tilde. So this isn't a quote mark, that's a quote mark, and this is a tilde. They're very similar, but you need to ensure that you use a tilde for this. For most, if you're using a QWERTY keyboard, it's the key that is next to 1, above tab, and below escape. So that's the one you're going to need to use. FiveM underscore DB will call the database, like so. If you don't have a tilde, by the way, you can just search up tilde on the internet and copy and paste it. But yeah, so that'll be the first line. Create database if not exists, and it'll be called FiveM underscore DB. You also need to add semicolons at the end of your instructions with SQL. It's just the syntax that it uses. And then we're going to do use, then we'll do FiveM DB. So what this is doing is if the database doesn't exist, it's just going to make it, and then we're going to use that database for what we're about to do. And then we're going to do create table instead of database if not exists. And then this will be called players, like so. And then we'll do an open bracket, bring the other one down. So in here, we're going to have our first line will be ID, or our first field will be ID. And the data type for this one will be integer. The field size we'll put as 11, should be fine. That's just basically how long it can be. And then we'll do not null, and it will be an auto increment, which means obviously everyone's got a different ID. So the first person is ID 1, the second is ID 2, and so on. So this will be auto underscore increment for that. And then we'll do a comma. Next one will be player ID with an underscore. There we go. This one will be a varchar, which is variable character. And then we'll put it as 50 field size for that one. And we'll do not null, and then comma. And then the final one will be player underscore name. So this is basically their Steam name this is going to grab. We'll do a varchar for this one as well, because it might have numbers and letters. And then we'll put the field size as 50 for this one as well, because the name shouldn't be longer than 50 characters. Not null. And then we're just going to add the primary key. If you don't know what a primary key is, it's basically one of these fields can be a primary key. And in a primary key, every separate piece of data within that field has to be completely unique. So no one can have the same ID, basically. Like you can't have 2 people with ID 1, 2 people with ID 2, for example. And then what we're going to do just at the end of this is add a semicolon, just so that this extraction is done. Basically, it's creating that table, and we're done there. That is everything done with the SQL file. So we'll just minimize that out for now. So we're just going to go back into our FX manifest, and I'm also going to add a dependency in here, like so. And then we're going to call this one mysql.async, like so. So what this means is for this database test file to run, basically mysql-async has to be running as a prerequisite. This basically means what we can do now is go back to our resources.cfg, and instead of having to do ensure mysql-async and then ensure database test, if I just ensure database test, basically because I've got the dependency of mysql-async, it won't run until this one does. So because I'm ensuring it, it will run mysql-async first before it runs the database test resource. So now that we've got that in there, we've saved it, we can just close out of there. And then we're going to need to go into our server.cfg. And then in here, you can add it anywhere in here. I'm just going to add it below the endpoint TCP and UDP rules. We're going to need to do set mysql underscore connection underscore string, like so. And then in speech marks, we're just going to do server equals localhost, because the SQL server that we're hosting is on our own computer. And we'll just add a semicolon there. And then the next one will be database equals, we've called it FiveM underscore DB. So we'll put it in there, semicolon, and then user ID equals root, because it's ourselves. And then we'll just add a semicolon. We're not going to add a password, so we don't need to add password in there. But if you're going to do password, you can just do password equals, and then whatever the password is that you're going to make. But we're not going to add one, so we can just leave that how it is for now. Now this won't work just yet. We do need to actually install some other applications before we can actually access the database. So the first one that we're going to need to download is called XAMPP. I'll leave a download in the description for this one, but it'll just be a case of pressing download from Windows. So now that the download's complete, we'll just go to downloads and we'll run the installer. You may get this message just here. It's perfectly fine, just press OK and continue with the installation. So on here, the only one we actually need is MySQL. So you can disable certain things that you don't want, like fake sendmail, Webalizer, we don't need that, Perl, Tomcat, Mercury. I'm going to leave FileZilla on there just in case I ever need to use that. And then we'll just press next and continue, next. There you go. And it will install XAMPP for us. There you go. And then it will just prompt us to start the control panel now, which we will do. So we'll just press finish. And here we've got the XAMPP control panel. So what we need to do for MySQL, we're just going to press start. And then that should start up with the port 3306. Brilliant. And we'll just let that finish loading before we close it. Brilliant, yeah, and then we can just close that down. And we're next going to need to install HeidiSQL. This is basically a DBMS, which is a database management system. Just basically lets us manage our database with a GUI. So we're just going to run the installer, save that, and then we'll run the setup. I'll just install for myself. I accept the agreement. Yep. And we'll just press install. And here we've got HeidiSQL launched. So what we can do now is on the left here, we've got our session names. So you can either right click and press new session or just press new at the bottom here. And then what we'll name this is, we'll call this FiveM. This is just our session name. There's nothing to do with the database or any data on it. It's just the session name that we're going to be using. Hostname IP is 127.0.0.1. That's basically the same as localhost. And user ID is root, and the port is 3306, which is the same one that we used or started on XAMPP. So now we're on here, we've got our session name FiveM, and then what we're going to do now is press open and load SQL file, and in the resource we've got database test, and then obviously our SQL file FiveM_db.sql. So we're just going to open that, and we're going to run it by pressing this blue arrow up here, and in our console at the bottom, it's just showing that it's created the table and the database. So now if I press this big green refresh button just here, this is now shown our FiveM database just here. So if I press the down arrow just to open it up, we've got our players table just here. And then if I go to table players, we've got ID, player ID, and player name. And this golden key next to it just means that that is the primary key. And then we can also go to data, and this, if we had any data in here, will show our data of players that have joined. Obviously we haven't joined yet, but we can now run the server and test it out. So I'll just minimize HeidiSQL for now, and we'll go back to our server directory. And if we run the start.bat, so in here we can see we've got mysql-async running because it was a dependency, which starts up automatically before database test starts up. And also because we put in our connection string on the server.cfg, you can see mysql-async success, database server connection established. So now we can go ahead and boot up FiveM and test it out. So when I connect to my server, it should say very quickly, because I wouldn't imagine it takes so long, it should say registering player information or getting player information, and then registering player information. Yeah, it said it very quickly just there. And now once we've loaded in, I'll just close it back down and we can check our database to see if it's stored our data. Brilliant, so I've just loaded in. I'm just going to close down FiveM, and I'm just going to go into the database, and I'm going to right click and refresh. Brilliant, so it's got the ID, so it's auto incremented, so I was the first player to ever connect to the server, so it's given me ID 1. So it's got my Steam ID just there, and my Steam name just there. So if anyone else joins, there'll be ID 2, and then the next one will be ID 3, and so on. So this basically is just an introduction to mysql-async, which we are going to be using a lot in the following tutorials. Next week's tutorial will be starting on a framework, which is going to be the topic of all tutorials for the foreseeable future. There may be an odd tutorial here and there that just shows other things, but for now it's just going to be focusing on getting a framework. So this is going to be things like economy, jobs, shops, police, medics, mechanics, trucking, taxis, all of that, all of the roleplay based stuff that people mainly come to FiveM for. I'm going to be covering all of that in the upcoming tutorials, so be sure to stick around. But that is everything for today. As always, if you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, share with your friends. If you need support, join the Discord server in the description. And I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.